Dr. Page, and this is apparently Dr. Trish Bare Grounds. I've never called you doctor before. I had no idea, and now I don't know if I'll ever be able to stop.
I don't use the title, and it comes from a long history of being a female in sports medicine. And as soon as you say the word doctor, nobody wants to listen to anybody else in the room. So I don't want any of my staff to ever be jilted or anybody think that they have any less knowledge or ability. So we all go by first names. So I rarely use it.
That's fair. I rarely use it unless I'm on social media trying to look important. So here I am.
There you go.
Yeah, so give us a rundown of all of the different accolades that you have accumulated over the year. There's like 7 of them.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch. I have a nice, beautiful LinkedIn page that goes on and on. I hate talking about myself, so I put it in writing so I don't have to. But I am the owner and medical coordinator of Bare Essential Sports Medicine, which I founded, that provides event coverage as well as one-on-one rehab and balance training, stability training. I'm also a certified nutritionist. I am a certified functional movement and balance specialist, and I'm a certified concussion management specialist. So I wear a lot of different hats because I'm a nerd.
You just really like school. You just really enjoy being tested.
I love learning, and you know, it's so silly. I would probably go get another degree if I didn't have to get the debt from it again.
Yeah,
you know, because I just love learning. So I take a lot of CEU stuff and courses that I can never bill for just because I enjoy it.
So for those of you guys that missed some of that or didn't really realize the amazingness of that, Trish works with U.S. athletes, the USA Taekwondo. She's generally the Medicare or the medical coordinator for. She's had her hands on apparently over 100 athletes that have some type of medal in a games somewhere, which she gave me my first opportunity to put my hands on a gold medalist, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm touching somebody who's won a gold medal. And it was like easily the highlight of that entire trip for me. So it was awesome. And the more I get to hang out with you, the more I realize I do not know. And I'm pretty self-confident enough to be like, I don't know things, which is why you're here, because so many of my moms are struggling with fatigue and trying to heal their bodies after babies, or even like, you know, perimenopausal and trying to work out and trying to figure, you know, hormones and things out. And they tend to become like really dirty words when we talk about hormones. So I'm just really excited to soak in some knowledge about easy things to help with stuff like that. And it starts with food and what we're putting in our bodies. So give us a little bit of the knowledge that's in that brain.
Well, you know, there are a lot of simple things that not only just new moms, but the elderly, a young child, you and I can do every day that can help us with that brain fog, with that fatigue, with that lull in the middle of the afternoon when we want to take that nap, or that can't just get out of bed thing, or we stay up too late because now we're wound up and going, and then we can't get up, even worse, the next morning. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that has to do with nutrition. It doesn't really even have to do so much with your activity, and as much as it has to do what you're putting in your body. And I try to tell my athletes that, you know, if you bought a Lamborghini, would you be putting the cheapest gas possible in it? Now, some of my athletes would, because they're just cheap, but they would also get the pinging and the troubles where they're always constantly going to have it fixed because they didn't take care of it. And then the same is with our bodies. You put crap in, you get more crap out. And it's a terrible thing that we do to ourselves, but it's a terrible thing that we don't learn. It's not greatly widespread in our education process for the average person, or even for a lot of medical professionals, unless you actually go and study it, which my latest nutritional degree came from Cornell. So if you don't go and actually learn it, you think that what's on the advertisement, what's on the news, what's in the pamphlet is good. And most of the time it's not. It's very confusing. And there, you know, the term diet is a bad word. It's a cuss word in my world, because you should never go, ever go on a diet. It is a nutritional program for life. It is changing to healthy habits. And a lot of the healthy habits that are simple are learning to read labels. You know, most of us, you know, you grab things off the shelves, out of the cold department. Oh, that looks good. Never read the labels. So my first rule of thumb whenever I teach athletes, and I actually will take athletes to a grocery store and go grocery shopping with them, take them to the farmer's market, show them what a farmer's market is. But the first thing is if you pick something up and you can't read the label, what's in that ingredient list, it goes back on the shelf. Because if you can't read it, it shouldn't be going in your body. You know, secondly is to understand what recommended daily allowance is, and that our government doesn't actually fully reveal all that on the label. You know, it'll tell you how much protein, how much iron, how much calcium, and the percentage that you're supposed to be getting each day. But when it comes to sugar, it'll say sugar, and then it'll say added sugar, but it won't have the recommended daily allowance. And that's usually because it's already over 250 to 500% over your recommended daily allowance in one item.
Oh.
And it's scary.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to
you know,
pause
and they
there.
put sugar.
Yeah, I think it's important to pause there to just talk about the detriments of added sugar. Because nobody talks about
There's so many detriments. Yeah. You want to talk about an energy sucker? It will be all the added sugars that are put in things. You know, we use sugar for processing. Any processed food that you buy, whether it's a can, a box, frozen, or those nice little lunch meats that people like to buy, they all have sugar. Unless you actually go and seek out brands that do not have added sugar, there's loads of added sugar. You know, I looked at a product last night that my child wanted to get that was sausage, and one sausage was 27 grams of sugar. 19 grams was added. So that's all this excess sugar. You know, yeah, so some of the sugar was coming from the fact that it had apples chopped up in it, which, you know, we like to blended foods, makes it easier, you know.
Yeah.
But there's 19 more grams of what? Wasted sugar. And there's those sort of things that give us a brain fog, give us that dragging feeling, particularly in the middle of the day or right before we go for a workout, you know, when you need the most energy. You know, so then you drink an energy drink or a Gatorade, or, you know, you grab a bar and then you go and work out, you know, or as my athletes do, they'll grab a candy bar. You know, and it gives you a boost for about 10 minutes. And then you have a hard slam. And with that slam comes the brain fog and the lethargy and all the things that we're trying so hard to get away from. And sugar is a huge, huge culprit for that people don't understand. You know, I have a lot of athletes say, well, I buy frozen. Frozen's good. They don't add sugar. You don't have to add sugar to preserve it. And I'm like, flip it over and read the label. You know, even Weight Watchers put sugar in their products. You know, so you really have to become a label reader.
And there's so much of it. I know sugar's been a really hot topic in the nutrition world, especially on social media. Everybody harps on sugar, which is fine because it's in everything and it's a problem. But nobody talks about what the sugar is doing, and especially in healing and in light of like COVID and different things that are causing such an inflammatory response. Like, what is it doing other than stimulating that part of your brain that cocaine also stimulates? But
what happens whenever you have cocaine? What are the attributes that a person shows whenever they're on cocaine? They're either yeah, exactly. So they're either really low and I don't want to do anything, or they're bouncing off the walls, and neither one is productive.
Right.
So we're stimulating that part of the brain that we can't control and can't utilize the energy that it's producing. So we don't want to do that. And the other side of that is carbs get a bad rap. You know, everybody's anti-carbs. Well, anti-carbs means that then you're not eating fruit, You're not eating vegetables. You're not eating beans. You're not eating any form of grain, because those all are carbs, you know? And we're back to that, we don't want the processed foods. So if you start looking at the carbs that are processed, your breads, your crackers, your pastas that are highly processed, they're bleached, every bit of nutrition that was once in that grain is gone. Those are the ones that we want to minimize. We don't even have to alleviate them necessarily from, and they're necessary. They're highly necessary for life. Now, the processed versions are not, and that's where we need to be cutting back. The breads, the crackers, the cereals, the pastas, all the ones that have been stripped of all nutrients they once had. Those are the ones that we need to cut back on, not necessarily eliminate, because we need cheat foods every now and then to think we feel better by eating it and then feel worse after we eat it, so then we don't eat it again for a while.
I always say, like, food is not bad. And like when it turns into bad, people then like want it more. So it's always like you're a teenager or not a teenager, but you're like 20 and you're never drinking because that's illegal, but you're drinking at the bar with a fake license. And then when you turn 21, people are like, it's over. Like the fun of it, or like, the need of it is gone. And I feel the same way about food. And I know, like, for me personally, like I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need like a piece of chocolate. I'm like, I love sweets, but I don't want a ton of it. And I'm like, but it's bad, or I didn't work out today, therefore it's bad for me to have this. And it makes it worse. And so then if I just have like
but one of the ways that I try to teach whenever I teach in nutrition is it's a whole mindset. That's why the word diet is a cuss word. It's a bad word that should never be used, because it's a whole mindset on how to live healthy. And so you cannot exercise away a bad eating program. So I have some CrossFitters. As soon as I leave CrossFit, they walk around the corner, they go to the donut shop. And I said, but I earned it. But no, you didn't, because the calories that you just got rid of doesn't mean you reload on ones that are nutrient deficient. Go have some good food. I'll let you go pig out on a full meal right now, as opposed to that one big donut you want to eat. So it's a mindset, and it takes a lot, and that's why a lot of these fad diets that we do are usually 30 days, because it takes about 30 days to change your habits. So if they can get you in the mindset of this is the way you should be going, then hopefully after you finish that 30 days, you don't go back to everything bad you were doing before. You'll go back to one or two of the things, but hopefully not all of them. So it's a mindset, and a lot of people are unwilling to change that mindset. When my athletes say, I need a little bit of chocolate in my life, I'm great. Let's try some dark chocolate. Look at your labels, make sure sugar isn't added or minimally added, and I'm good with it. I don't want you having milk chocolate. I don't want you to have anything that has dairy in it. Yeah, but I also take dairy out of their diets, so therefore it has to come out of their sweets as well. So they find ingenious ways of finding all these chocolates and then dipping their strawberries in it, and finding other ways to actually say, well, it's healthy because I had the strawberries and it was dark chocolate, so I wasn't cheating. So and I'm okay with that, because you have to have some form of reward for all the hard work you put in as well. You can't always take everything away and expect to be okay with that. In my world, it's an 80-20. If you're good 80% of the time, you get a gold star. I'm great with that. 20% of the time, I may be beating you over the head, but you can get away with it.
I think that's what I was told as well after I tore my ACL in high school. Was at the point in time I was like just eating whatever, and I was having like 20 of those the animal crackers that were covered in icing, and I was just like casually eating them as like a snack after school. And after I started working with a nutritionist and somebody who specialized in soccer and returning athletes for ACL, a lot like what you do, and they were like, "What are you eating?" And I was like, "What's wrong with it?" And then
why are you eating it? It really doesn't bring you that much joy. It's kind of like when I decide that, I really haven't had macaroni and cheese in a long time. I really think I want some tonight. And then 5 minutes after you finish eating, you're like, why did
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's like, but yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, sugar is a huge problem in our society and with our athletes because we sell drinks to them. I mean, I work events for all the energy drinks, so I'm surrounded by it all the time, as well as all the sports drinks that are like Kool-Aid with caffeine and bubbles. You know, sugar is a problem. It's a real problem in our society, unfortunately.
Yeah, and like I took a nosedive, just a straight deep dive into hormones, and we're talking about them being a major almost like a hierarchy, and the top of that hierarchy is cortisol and sugar or insulin, and like how that functions in your body. And if those two are completely off, as well as your inflammatory markers, because it's impossible to not have an inflammatory response with this much sugar, and like how they just bleed into fertility, into gut health, into heart health, and into like all of these things that everybody wants to just exercise away. And I'm like, well, that's great that you're working out and that's part of it, but what are we all doing with these things that nobody talks about? Because those aren't talked about. They're not the flashing hormones. They're not the estrogen and the testosterone and the things that we want to talk about and make famous. And I'm like, these are simple things that we can change.
And you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, you can't get rid of them either.
No. And yeah, so, you can't just take a drug and get rid of cortisol.
No. And like everybody gives cortisol a bad rap because it's associated with stress. And like, well, we're stressed all the time, so it's impossible to get rid of it. And it's true, like how our society is set up with blue lights and cell phones and things that are always keeping us on. Like, yes, it is very hard to bring those levels down, but there is like a normal resting level, even for where we're at. And then you start adding in poor diet, poor sleep, and all of a sudden these levels are up here. And I know for a lot of my women, it's a pregnancy issue. We're having a really hard time becoming pregnant or maintaining pregnancy because the body is constantly in this fight that we don't even know that we're in. It's nuts.
You know, I actually did not get pregnant until I was 35.
Wow.
Did not get pregnant. And I didn't have protected sex. I wanted children back in my 20s and it just wasn't happening. But in my early 30s, I went first pescatarian, then I went vegetarian, and then I went to strict vegan from sustainable sources. And during that time that I was vegan, I got pregnant. And a lot of it has to do with, turns out my body's highly susceptible to hormones. So hormones in meats and animal products, my body tends to hang on to them more. Having been on the pill for 8 years when I was younger, you know, that to control my periods, not even for birth control, but because I didn't want to have a period every 14 days, which is where I was.
Oof.
And so, you know, that messes you up.
And yeah, there's a whole like rabbit deep dive that I plan on doing on a bunch of lives, is talking about why like the pill doesn't fix your period problems. Those are hormones and it just like masks them. But if you're holding on to hormones, or we're getting all of these extra hormones from processed food, and like that includes deli meat that you can walk up to the counter and get because it's still processed, it's just not in the package yet. And let's not even talk about the processed cheese, like the American Kraft singles, like those bother me on such a deep level because cheese should never feel rubbery.
Well, it's not cheese, it's a cheese product, you know? That's an argument I have with athletes all the time, but it's cheese. No, it isn't. It's a cheese byproduct. It's not actually cheese.
And I have a lot of people that are working on like, oh, I'm decreasing all of my calories to lose weight. So we're using these fat-free processed cheeses, or, you know, even like
they're the worst things on earth.
And it's the same way as like the diet sodas, because those are still like so loaded with chemicals. Like I get that stevia is a really fun thing, and like Splenda and all of our fake sugars like still give us the sweetness, but I don't really know how great they are for our bodies.
Well, the diet drinks, the fake sugars that they use actually stimulate you to eat more. So they stimulate that hunger more. So if you notice, if you're drinking Diet Coke all day, you're nibbling all day, and then you're famished whenever you finally do sit down and eat. It's because it has a chemical in it that stimulates hunger. So that's not helpful if you're trying to lose weight.
Not helpful at all.
No.
Oh gosh.
But if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, you should talk to my child who just finished a degree in sustainable agriculture and talking about hormones and the big feedlots and all that horrible stuff that many people put in their bodies. That's a whole nother rabbit hole of talking about hormones and antibiotics and bacteria and all that wonderful stuff.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that I think, most of social media is looking for is something that's easy to change, that's sustainable to change. And maybe it is reading the labels. Maybe it's adding in a certain like leafy green to help with your insulin and sugar levels. What is your like go-to, like this is the first thing you should change because it's the like basis of everything?
Well, besides reading labels, the first thing I want to do is I want to shift you from dairy.
Okay, why?
Because anything that, well, for the same reason that we are highly against gluten. Both gluten and dairy products contain the protein casein. Casein is a highly inflammatory food. So even if you're not injured, you're going to feel puffy, you're going to feel lethargic, you're going to be, imagine when you eat that pizza, how you feel between the gluten of the crust and the cheese on the pizza and the sugar that's in the sauce and the sugar that's in the meats on it and the processing and all that. It makes you feel like you have a lead belly and you don't want to do anything. You just want to lay around the sofa and be bleh. So dairy is a huge one, but dairy is a hard shift for a lot of people. And so there are different ways that I shift it. We'll start, if they're really a cheese person, then I shift them to goat cheese first, which doesn't have the same type of proteins in it. So it's easier to digest. We're not dealing so much with that high level casein problem.
Okay.
It's harder to get, more expensive, so there are those issues. When it comes to my athletes that want to just drink milk, I'm like, milk is made to fatten baby cows. You want to be a fat baby cow? Because that's what milk does for you. That's all it's meant to do, is to fatten you up. There's tons of hormones in it that work against you. So, but there are alternatives. If you like really sweet, then coconut milk is the direction we go. If you don't like so sweet, then we look at soy, or we look at the nuttier ones, your hemp or your cashew or your almond. There's so many alternatives now that are healthy and they're plant-based, which is where we need to be. We need our intake of food to be 2/3 from a plant source and no more than 1/3 from animal sources. And one of the ways to meet that is to get rid of the dairy. You'll feel a huge difference. I have athletes that lose 10, 15 pounds within 10 days just from dumping the dairy. Because they're so heavy into it. They drink milk, they eat cheese, they eat yogurt, they eat ice cream. They think they're doing all these things for good protein sources, good calcium sources. It's a really poor source of calcium. The research that's out now is saying that people that were heavy milk drinkers and are now in their 60s are actually having brittle bone issues. They're fracturing easier. My mom, when she was 60, didn't fall. She tripped but never fell, and she fractured her patella. And it came from my mom has always been a heavy cheese eater, ton of cheese with everything, and it actually works against the building of the bones. It's not a usable calcium. Calcium sources are better coming from green leafy vegetables or tzatziki, a lot of beans. There are calcium sources in plants that are a lot better that don't have those issues. But I have mothers that tell me, well, I have to give my child milk, to give the help their brain and their bones. I'm like, no, you actually don't. When you come off of breast milk or formula, you should be going straight to water.
Mm.
You should not be going to milk or juice. You should be going to water. Get that child to enjoying water and the goodness, because hydration is crucial for anybody at any age.
Mhm.
And if they don't learn young, they'll never learn. You know,
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, and I think the normal age is really what, 12 months is when we start really transitioning away from milk. And I know a lot of women are at 6 months, you know, if we're doing partial formula, partial whole milk, or you know, and I think most of the time that's more of a calorie type of thing and making sure that they're not hungry. But if we're, you know, filling with, you know, doing formula with the rice, or I know it's not great, but it's better than, you know, probably some of that dairy is of the whole milk and formulas with the rice
Yeah.
bottles and the different foods and things like that, that we could start giving them little cute little squeezy packets.
Yeah, I mean, because like when I introduced foods to my child, I used coconut milk and soy milk based yogurts,
Mhm.
and chopped up the food, put it in the blender, and then mixed it into the yogurt, so it's that smooth, creamy transition.
Mm-hmm.
And to
Sugar?
this day, my child does not want anything dairy outside of ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, after we've had ice cream, it's like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. You
Yeah.
know, because it's inflammatory. It immediately begins the swelling in all parts of the body, your joints, your muscles, your belly, and it affects your brain as well.
Yep.
Yeah, the gut badly, and it makes you fart. You know, and all the lovely things in life. You know, so, but yeah, I mean, dairy is one of the first fixes. If I have somebody that's getting ready to go into surgery, besides doing prehab to strengthen before going, say, into ACL reconstruction, one of the big things that we do is we remove them from dairy and we remove them from added sugar.
Mm-hmm.
And they go into surgery and out of surgery so much easier and so much healthier and feeling better, that they don't usually go back to, at least not in large dosages.
Mm. Yeah, that's so powerful to have some type of control in a situation where it almost feels like you don't have control, when you have to have some type of procedure, or it's this, or you know, I can't do this for the rest of my life kind of a thing. So giving some type of control, and it starts with controlling our foods, and that's amazing. Trish, this has been so much fun. I know there's been a lot of technical difficulties, but I've enjoyed this so much and I've learned so much, and I can't wait to get this onto social media. I know that I can find you at Bear Sports, or is it Bear Ground Sports? I can't remember. What's your Instagram handle?
Bare Essential Sports Med.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bear at Bear Essential Sports
And
Medicine. Are you on Facebook too, or just Insta?
yeah, we have a business Facebook page for Bare Essential Sports Medicine. We have a website. We have Twitter. We even have a TikTok, although I haven't really been too productive on that one yet.
Yeah, so everybody, you can find her, follow her. She's posting so many different things on movements and foods. It's fun. I find a lot of nifty ideas on there that I repackage and give to you guys because they're great. But thank you so much, Trish, and this has been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It was great talking with you. Anytime.